In the very heart of Europe, there's a wild oasis, a wetland forest of pristine beauty. But this tranquil scene is just a breathing break in the life of the Danube. Already, massive clouds are darkening the sky, foreshadowing the moment when their discharge will be added to the flow of the river. Then, the quiet days are over. The everlasting cycle of water is once again set in motion. Remnants of previous floods, megatons of driftwood, rise from the mud. Once the main river spills beyond its banks, everything begins to move. On the water, in the water, underwater. Even on the water's edge. The flood is a primeval force. Nothing will stop it. You escape or you die. The river's power is at work, wherever power stations have not stolen it. It's a power that will destroy and recreate again and again and again. The Danube's floodplains are an extremely dynamic habitat, perpetually changing, like any natural riverscape. Across most of Central Europe, however, natural riverscapes are history. As long as this last wild remnant of Austria's wetlands remains untamed, it will harbour ever-changing secrets. The secrets of the flooded forest. In the wetland forest, the waters are always flowing. Sluggish, just seeping along for most of the time, they give no hint of the sudden violence they're capable of. The current pulls along logs, piles them up, and whenever it finds a new channel, sets them aground, for a while at least. Since 1996, the wetland forest downstream from Vienna has been a national park, the prize of a tough struggle of many Austrians against the construction of a power station. This precious patch of wilderness touches Vienna's suburban gardens. It makes Vienna a member of an exclusive club of big cities who can boast protected wilderness areas within their metropolitan borders. In the urban area, the Danube is diked and dammed up, like almost anywhere along its course through Austria. But right on the opposite bank is the wild side, with wetland forests, oxbows, and ever-shifting sandbanks and channels, bogs and islands. Changing water levels have shaped this landscape and are constantly reshaping it. The protected area along the Danube covers 10,000 hectares. Almost 1/3 of that is metropolitan land. Vienna's suburbs in spring, idyllic, and not as quiet as it seems. There's more life out here than in the city. The forest is crawling with thousands of amphibians. Out in the cultivated fields, there's no place for them. Toads and northern frogs. For a few days, they congregate en masse to mate in the Danube's backwaters. Few males will find a partner of their own. Females are in the minority. That goes for toads as well as frogs. Toads are quite different from frogs. They have warts on their skins and vertical pupils. But love makes blind, especially when you have to be quick to grab a partner. A young otter hunting alone for the first time. Adult otters will avoid toads, they just hunt frogs, but you have to know the difference. The acid secretion on the toad's skin is not meant to be an appetizer. But the otter needs another lesson. He has finally grasped it. Frogs simply taste better. No other wetland inhabitant had been eradicated from Central Europe as radically as the European pond turtle. Once every wetland forest was full of them. But where do you find wetland forests these days? Central Europe's only member of the turtle family need quiet bodies of water with lush vegetation. These are its hunting grounds. Nearby, they need dry, hot areas like old sandbanks where they can bury their eggs. This is a rare combination, even around here. Now in spring, the water is still cold, so the turtles spend hours sunbathing on driftwood. A shallow oxbow with banks protected by dense undergrowth is an ideal nesting site for little grebes and coots. Soon the reeds will be high. Then the floating nest will be practically invisible. The grebes try to keep a low profile in contrast to their loud neighbours, the coots. In the commotion of a battle at sea, sinking your own partner is a real risk. More than 100 bird species crowd into Austria's last big wetland forest to breed. Trees in the bogs grow fast and high. Black poplars, a rare species elsewhere, stand up to 35 meters tall. They grow in the company of white poplars and white willows. The soft wood of such fallen giants rots away in just a few years. In each stage of their growth and decomposition, these impressive trees provide food and shelter to myriads of organisms. Many animals and plants could not even exist without deadwood, such as mosses, lichen, fungi, certain insects, or the black woodpecker. Deadwood. What an inappropriate term. This mouldy three-dimensional world contains more life than a living tree. Since the Danube's floodplain has been declared a national park, the forest is allowed to grow practically without human interference. The management only intervenes in order to promote indigenous tree species. Once the river has calmed down after the spring floods and the water level has sunk by several meters, vast gravel banks still uncolonized by trees will surface. Rough gravel like that is good enough for willows and poplars, and for a special guest. The little ringed plover. These ground-nesting birds need a gravelly, moist breeding range. Ideal breeding places like this are only found where the river's flow is unhampered, a rare situation in modern Central Europe. He makes it clear to her. Here, right here is where you should lay your eggs. She is choosy. This is his suggestion number 10. Yes, here. That's right. It's pointless. She's got her own mind. The Danube is really a mountain river with a decline of 40 centimeters per kilometer and a current of up to 3 meters per second. The snow melt in the Alps and storm fronts can cause the river to swell at any time around the year. Apart from the Wachau Valley, this is the Danube's last stretch without a hydroelectric dam. So its bed is free of sand and silt. In the gravelly river bottom, myriads of water insects and other organisms thrive, feeding a great variety of fishes. Vimberbreams and barbels, their bodies, their behavior, and their habitat are shaped by the current. These fish need rough gravel for spawning. Their offspring can only survive in the hollows and cavities between rounded rocks. "60 species of fish live in the national park. This astonishing diversity is a result of the diverse and ever-changing currents. The deep, sluggish waters of Oxbows are the home of giant catfish. In the shallow water of Oxbows, a profusion of water lilies and yellow pond lilies grows from the sand, sheltering swarms of fry. River pike patrol the outlines of sunken treetops. This spacious, silent, dark world below the water lilies remains hidden from view, sealed up by the sky's bright reflection. The clouds may be drifting high above the forest canopy, yet they're closely connected to this watery world. The giant trees of the floodplain, the diversity of water bodies and of fishes, and the protection enjoyed by the park's inhabitants has invited a homecomer, a one-time native who had gone extinct. The white-tailed eagle tops the food chain. He is now the pinnacle of this ecosystem. 2.5 meters wingspan make him Europe's biggest eagle. White-tailed eagles mostly hunt waterfowl and fish. In recent years, a few breeding pairs from Eastern Europe have settled down in Austria. The fact that they have stayed proves that the Danube's floodplains are truly regaining their natural state. White-tailed eagles raise their young in huge nests which they use throughout several years. Such nests weigh hundreds of kilograms. Outside the national park, few trees are big enough to carry that weight. Meanwhile, the young otter has learnt to fish. The otter's appetite for fish was the reason why Austria's otter population was practically wiped out. But like the white-tailed eagle, the otter is gradually returning to the Danube's floodplains. A mid-sized Crusian carp. That'll do for the day. The kingfisher depends on small fish and, like the little ringed plover, on a natural riverscape. Each year, kingfishers dig new nesting tunnels into the clay and sand of steep banks created by a flood. Driftwood serves as a vantage point from where the birds can dive deep into the water. The fishing grounds and the nesting tunnel should not be too far apart. Parents cannot afford to commute. Their brood is hungry and voracious. A pair of kingfishers can raise up to 4 broods a year, as it often must when floods destroy their tunnels. The fate of the young birds depends both on the river below and the flow of clouds above them. A massive rain front pushes against the northern slope of the Alps. The clouds will lose their freight across a vast catchment area, and all the runoff will end up in the Danube. Today, the floodplain is again connected to the main river through various channels. Dams, dikes and embankments that have cut off the river from its floodplain in many places have been removed in the national park area. A few days of rain upstream and the water level will rise up to 5 meters, very suddenly, within just a few hours. Once again, the inhabitants of the floodplain see a radical reconstruction. Suddenly, the entire landscape is in motion. It's a truly dynamic habitat. Even the floodplain snails seem quite dynamic. Each new flood chews away banks and shifts channels, metre by metre. The width of the river is now too great to be really grasped, even from the air. The greater part of the flooded area is hidden below the forest canopy. The trees and shrubs of the floodplain suffer such inundations several times a year. They even profit from this. The water keeps competitors away. The flood may have come suddenly, but not at a bad moment. In fact, some inhabitants of the floodplain have been actually waiting for it. They need a flood to reproduce. Flooded meadows are their spawning grounds. As soon as the floodwaters begin to subside and the current slows down, they arrive from all sides in order to mate in the grass. The water will remain in huge puddles for quite some time. Long enough, hopefully, for their offspring to mature. Thus the flood creates new life. The carp can only enter and leave the meadows when the water level is high enough. The time window they have to mate is just a few days, and it depends on the weather. In dry years, the carp cannot mate. Before the remnant waters seep away, the carps move back to deeper permanent waters. Missing the right moment means being cornered. When the river rises, getting out fast is crucial. Some are not fast enough. Red deer are powerful swimmers, but currents can be so violent that they stand no chance. The loss of individuals has little effect on the overall wildlife population. And for a wild boar mother raising 5 or 6 youngsters, a flood victim can be a real bonus. The sheer height of fresh gravel banks and the driftwood deposits on them mark the floodwater levels. Between floods, one can take a stroll along the riverbed. In quiet pools among driftwood, the fry of various species is well protected. These are the kindergartens of the Danube. But when the rains fail for a few weeks, these ponds can dry out and become a deadly trap for millions of young fish. Herons, storks and waders can now have an easy meal. Regulated rivers cannot offer such feasts of fish, amphibians and water insects, whatever a bird may want. The tender fare is still alive and fresh. But soon the water gets too low, too warm, and lacks oxygen. Masses of water striders gather on the dying fish. These land bugs have become specialists in exploiting the surface tension of water. Theirs is an absolutely level world. Now these insect hunters turn into scavengers. Still no rain. One or 2 weeks after the flood, the pools are dry. But life has not dried up. Meat flies have laid their eggs on the carcasses. Up to 1,000 eggs per fly, all in a single day. Thus the dead come alive once more. Even their skeletons will soon fertilize green plants. The floodplain forest is cool, humid, lush. But less than 200 steps from the river bank, the air is dry and clear. the land reminiscent of a steppe. Old gravel banks, now grass-covered, are so high above the groundwater that the roots of trees will not reach down. Their gentle southern slopes are heated by a blistering sun. This is the ideal microclimate for pond turtles to deposit their eggs, the very opposite of the climate in the turtle's immediate habitat. The turtles have mated in the water. Now the females dig palm-sized pits into the dry slopes and deposit about 10 eggs. Then the clutch is carefully covered up. The young turtles will hatch in autumn, and some will leave immediately for the water. Others will spend the winter in their pits. In mild, windless, moonlit summer nights, alien-like monsters leave their hidden water world to begin a new life. They have spent 2 or 3 years in the water. Now they hatch from their larval skins. Dragonflies, thousands of them belonging to various species. An azure hawker. Within a few hours, dragonflies turn into masters of flight. As soon as the sun has dried their wings, they take off to explore their new world and view their old one from above. Just a few days later, they are sexually mature and mate. 6 weeks later, their lofty life ends. During these summer days, billions of other water insects also rise to the surface and leave the water. Caddisflies, stoneflies, mayflies, and mosquitoes. Midsummer, weeks of easy living to be enjoyed before life gets harder again. Morning mists on the waters are the first hint of summer drawing to its end. And when the rough calls of deer echo across the water, summer is over. Their rut sets in around mid-August, earlier than in the Alps. The animals are restive. Tension is building. The stags round up their harems. Even stags who have spent the entire year invisibly in the forest now enter the arena. The strongest stags are powered up, ready for battle. The rut takes place in a small arena. The floodplain forest is really a wilderness island surrounded by cultivated land. There's little room to maneuver. For 4 weeks, the stags give all they have. Then peace returns to the river. Autumn. The nights are now longer than the days, and they're getting frosty. In the mornings, thin ice lies on the water and silence on the land. Both can be shattered in an instant. The willow had to fall to help another homecomer through the winter. First, the beaver gets his fill, feasting on the tender new buds of the treetop. Then he carves up the tree into portions, placing branch after branch near the entrance to his castle. Underwater, the branches will stay fresh. Small fish profit from the rest of the tree. Here they can hide from cormorants and herons. There's no need for beavers to build dams along the Danube. There are plenty of ponds and lakes of sufficient size and depth. When the wind turns to a northerly, it brings snow and more. With the north wind, the Danube's winter guests arrive. Hundreds of cormorants spend the winter on the floodplain, drifters along the river, always in search of new fishing grounds. Here they always find food until the ice cuts them off from the backwaters. All the stagnant waters are now sealed up. Only the main channel is still open, but fishing in the strong current is tedious. Herring gulls also travel far. A few weeks ago they may have been on the North Sea or the baby pond turtles have hatched in autumn and waited underground, motionless, for the warmth of spring. The tiny creatures are no bigger than a euro coin. Without turning left or right, they hurry straight down to the water. This is the riskiest hour of their lives. There's no lack of predators in the floodplain. Saved. When you're that small, hiding is your only choice. The flood channels are still almost dry. The snow melt in the Alps has not yet set in. But when the spring flood finally does arrive, it's overwhelming. The Danube's might can be frightful. Once more, a stretch of bank sags away, providing the kingfisher precisely with what he's looking for and cannot find anywhere else. Only where the river remains untamed can the unique animals and plants of the floodplain find a place to live. Again, the flood has created a fresh gravel bank. A brand new breeding place for the plover. Floods come, floods go, and they come again. That's life. That's a living river. As long as the Danube is allowed to live, the flooded forest will continue to surprise us with new secrets.